Just answering questions with WebTech. The primary subject of the first part of this will be Jesus Campos and assertions that were made by Tucker Carlson on Fox News because it's a propaganda source and nobody looked up any update. Well, have we heard anything from it? Well, if you only watch Fox, no, because they had to do a retraction and they tried to bury it. So let's get on with your comment. When Campos crossed the border and returned, Customs had no records of him crossing into Mexico, only coming back to the USA. Wrong. The source was Fox News and they lied to you by omission. I'll prove that in a minute. Stop watching Fox and CNN. He was also paid not to talk. I don't know that, and you don't know it either unless you provided a source. Do we have to go through this every time? I had to look up one set of sources. I'm only going to cover part of this. You're not allowed to comment anymore unless you post where you get this from. Just the name of the article, the year, month, who did it, who done it, something, some damn thing. He was hosted by Ellen, who's sponsored by, and then you leave out MGM or whatever. Who is she sponsored by? She's a TV host for a TV show, and she's had lots of hosts. But you're implying by omission, so it seems amplified by silence, deafeningly, that she was paid off and it's suspicious amounts, and she has her own slot machine in Vegas. Yes, she does. So do other people. His former brother-in-law, I've looked this up, I've never been able to confirm that it's a former brother-in-law for real. It's an assertion made by somebody because everybody was saying, we need any relative to say dirt, and if you don't say dirt, we're not going to put you up. Oh, who are you? Well, I'm a brother-in-law, formerly. What does that mean? That means somebody who might have met Campos said Campos might have had contact with Paddock. That's a friend of a friend statement, and I'm supposed to care. Okay, next. Prior to the shooting, why would Mandalay Bay allow for more bags to be brought in, since there was an occurrence of lots of guns being stashed 3 years prior? Because it wasn't guns, they probably checked the bags, or if they didn't check the bags, it's the same thing we've all run into. If you keep security high, people don't want to show up at your motel, so they lowered security after they figured there was no problem. They got lax. He was able to truck in a bunch of bags because it happens all the time. It's Vegas. People do all sorts of things. I don't even want to bring up people bringing up mannequins and inflatable dolls for parties where nothing hanky goes on. It's just decoration. People sometimes bring in gigantic sample collections. I'm not kidding. And how many bags did he bring in, or did he bring in the same bag over and over again, hauling it in and then storing the bag in the building? How did he do it? How many bags total? Did you look up the numbers? Would you just go look at the insert video and stop bugging me? There was litigation still looming. Seems a bit off, doesn't it? Yeah, every bit of this seems a bit off if you don't look up any updates and find out, oops, this was wrong, oops, I had to do a retraction, oops, Tucker Carlson pulled another boner. I'm not covering the rest of it, and you're not allowed to post anymore unless you tell me who's the former brother-in-law, where'd you get that information, admit that this was a friend of a friend thing, and as for the Customs and Border Patrol stuff, we'll just get to that real quick here. Fox News conspiracy anti-fact Tucker rhymes with Carlson fake news claims he was forced to retract and or correct, meaning he lied overtly by omission. Campos wasn't licensed as a security guard in Nevada. A lot of companies hire guards and have them get registered or certified while working, but if they're not going to be employed anywhere other than the hotel casino at the location on property, they don't have to be licensed through Nevada Private Investigator License Board or Sheriff's Office or whatever, and in some cases they're allowed to carry a weapon without having what you would consider proper permitting, and they're not private investigators. You have to look up the laws. I'm tired of this. Go away. Next. Customs and Border Patrol documents from a confidential source show that 25-year-old Jesus Campos, a 25-year-old Jesus Campos, came back into the country with a rental car from California through San Ysidro border crossing in California, October 8th, 2017, and didn't take his car, because that way it would be harder to bother him or track him, or maybe he just felt like using a rental car. People use rental cars. He was on a company-approved, pre-planned trip to visit his family members, and they really wanted to visit him because they wanted to make sure he was okay. Investigators didn't find any reason to stop him for a simple reason. He wasn't considered a suspect. The whole point of the first few hours of this kind of thing is you try to figure out, is this person a suspect? No. Okay, well, you want them to do a non-suspect and hold him because he's supposed to be, quote, the only witness to the shooting, according to Tucker Carlson. No, he wasn't the only witness to the shooting. Tucker had to retract later. He was one of two people on the floor, and again, they didn't have a reason to hold him. Am I being detained? Do you want the laws to say that if a shooting happens, everyone's detained, held in a FEMA camp, and then, guillotines? No. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain about the long arm of the law not doing what you want it to, and then doing it to you when it's the same thing you want done to others. Do unto others. Next. It's not baffling how he'd be able to drive a car with one leg with a very tiny gunshot-related wound he thought was a pellet wound. They removed the foreign material, flushed out the wound, and sent him home. He was back to work a little while after this, by the way. You can drive a car with one leg. Why would Tucker Carlson actually say on camera, I don't know how anybody could drive a car with a minor injury to the to the leg or whatever. Oh, it's because he didn't know that the guy had a smaller wound? It is technically a gunshot wound if it's caused by a gunshot. If a gun shoots a bag full of BB gun pellets and one of them hits you, it's still considered a gunshot wound because it's precipitated by the firing of in this case a smokeless powder cartridge. It is considered a gunshot wound. It's a technicality, but that is literally what it's called, because it's accelerated something to a high enough speed that it could potentially be lethal. A BB gun pellet, if fired at the right angle, can kill you. I know. But the point is, he also might have been walking funny because his calf muscle swelled up. Oh, which leg was it, right or left? Most employees are not allowed, per company policy, to talk about company business with media unless they're authorized to do so, and most companies are legally forbidden, federal and state laws, from talking about employees without their permission. If neither party gave permission after a certain point or before a certain point, that's perfectly acceptable. And the fact is, immediately after his name got released, conspiracy theorists began claiming that he's part of a false flag because he was named. They found out where he was, and one of them showed up at his house and had an unnatural desire for his chubbiness. And some people threatened to kill him because they decided anything that shows up in the news is an excuse. I have a right to threaten to kill people because they're famous. That's literally how some of these assholes think. You don't think that happens? Okay. Put up your name and face on the screen on a video, and let me do a video about you, and we'll see how many death threats you get. I get 2 or 3 a week. Now, it used to be 4 or 5 a day. At one point, it was 12 an hour. Would you like to tell me why the hell I don't think that you have a valid complaint here? I think we've wasted enough time, but I'm sure someone's going to ask some more questions. If you have any links for any of this stuff, I'll go ahead and cover them, I guess, because all the videos I had about this before are gone. Nothing about what he did was considered odd. If he had arranged a new visit to Mexico, that wouldn't have been considered odd either, because he would have asked approval, and he did actually ask approval, we found out later, from the police. He was given permission. He wasn't a suspect. He gave the little bit of testimony he had. The video cameras, body cams, are more valuable. He's a worthless witness, in my opinion. I'm sorry. He wasn't really all that useful. Next, I see where you're going with this person says to someone else. Paddock, with no training, mental and physical health problems, sure seemed to be on his game that night. Counterpoint. I did demonstrate, and several people have in videos that aren't related to this, that aren't even talking about Paddock, that it's incredibly trivial to fire guns this way if you're shooting into a frickin' barrel. All of the preparation in the world couldn't reproduce the same outcome given the source. Horse shit. Unless you have others selling the story and holding their cards close, far too many anomalies to be considered coincidental. Unless somebody lets me actually do a live fire exercise, I mean, I'm an unprepared jerk. The only experience I have is building guns. How about we have me do it? Farmers for Truth could supply the weaponry. We could build some improvised bump stocks to give ourselves a bad experience. Hey, we'll even do the bipod. All that has to happen is somebody find me a 300-foot altitude point to fire down at a 600-foot across, a 600-yard away location. Let's say 100 yards across with a bunch of paper targets. And we'll see what the ratio is. Has anybody done one of these experiences or tests? No, and I know the only thing anybody wants to do is get out a helicopter and somehow make it into something else. I imagine you covered the placebo effect. If so, could you point me to a video or quickly summarize the results? It's a hotly debated subject. My research thus far has been all one-sided, in favor of placebo effect being a real thing. Studies have run by Harvard and Stanford Medical School seems a bit wooish to me. Okay, barring, I'll give you my example. If you're told not to think of a pink elephant, you will think of a pink elephant. It's the power of suggestion. Most magic tricks are based on it. It's not the placebo effect, it's the power of suggestion. If you believe you're taking an aspirin pill when actually, or a capsule, and it's actually empty capsules or sugar capsules, one of the tests is whether or not the human body will do a simulation of the expected outcome. That's all. It's real simple. You can get this effect from doing the phantom hand experiment. That sounds dirty, but it really isn't. That people do when they're trying to train themselves to move their legs properly when they have an artificial leg, all sorts of things like that. If you expect a certain outcome, or expect a certain outcome isn't possible, you will subconsciously and consciously fight whatever is happening to you. And there's a certain personality type. I'm not going to point out. Conspiracy theorists might be the best source for this, because I'm not really sure about that truth, but it seems like it. That no matter what compelling evidence you have in the real world, including pain or injury or illness, you can fool yourself into feeling any way you wish, or don't wish. That's the part that's a problem. If you expect a certain outcome, it happens. Now that's what it's based on. It sounds wooish, except for only one reason. The placebo effect is a phenomena that is observed that isn't understood. That's what you're running into. All they can do is test to see if it happens. They don't know exactly why it works this way, except for one thing. When you're dreaming, is everything very real? If it's a yes, that means your mind can force you to have a false reality. Same thing as a hallucination. I put it under hallucinatory stuff. That's it. I can make myself think about music and I hear it. Most of you can. You're not hearing music. Your brain is playing it back in your head. If you expect, after you take a sugar pill and not knowing that it's not a low blood pressure, high blood pressure pill, your blood pressure may change, especially if you're doing biofeedback and observing the result. You can affect yourself in such a way that you don't need to take medications. I have experienced a period of time in my life where pain pills were more of a pain than the pain. I taught myself to fight the pain by getting it out of my head. It is, in effect, a sensation that you're registering in your head you can't ignore. As I sit here, I'm experiencing that right now for extended periods of time. I can ignore the fact that I'm in a position that is straining my calf muscles. But I can do it.